Assalamu alaikum guys, I hope everyone is doing well. In today's video I'm going to be sharing 10 books that I've really benefited from and books that I believe can benefit many people out there. Now I'm going to be sharing these in no particular order except the first book, and also I'm going to try to make this as coherent as I can because some of these books or many of these books are not related to each other and they don't stick to one category or topic. However, I'll try my best to sort of show the links where there are links and otherwise just highlight the benefits of each book and what you may expect to gain. So the first book on the list, this won't be a surprise and it shouldn't be a surprise, is the Quran. Now, it's extremely important, brothers and sisters, for all of us to read the Quran regularly, and especially in a language that we understand as well, because we have to understand the meanings. We have to understand what Allah has told us, and we have to try to implement those things in our lives to the best of our ability. And one of the best things we can do with the Quran is to read it consistently, regularly, even if it's, a couple of pages, one page, half a page a day. But the Quran, what it's going to do is it's going to give you it's like a rubric. It's a vantage point. It's going to build your worldview. It's going to allow you to be able to have some key core concepts down before you delve into other books and start reading, on other topics such as philosophy, etc., if you do decide to read those books. So it's vitally important that we start with the Quran. Now, I'm going to be recommending a couple of translations. The first one is the Quran that's been translated by Abdul Halim and published by Oxford Press. For me personally, this is one translation that I continue to go back to. I really enjoy the flow of the translation. Now, obviously, it's a translation that's not focusing on the literally capturing every single Arabic word and translating it into English. However, the way it's designed is to specifically focus on drawing out the meanings and deliver those meanings to us. So for me personally, this is probably my most favorite, or one of the two most favorite translations of the Quran. The second one is the Clear Quran. This one's by Sheikh Mustafa Khattab. It's a brilliant translation as well, and it's almost the best of all worlds translation because it captures or stays very close to the true meanings of the Arabic words, as well as it provides you a thematic breakdown of the Quran. So where certain topics have been chunked off, and it makes it easier for people that are not used to reading the Quran for them to read the Quran. So they can engage it, understand it, stop, ponder, reflect, and move on. Again, with this translation, as with Abdul Halim's translation, there are some very beneficial footnotes, but it's not overwhelming. There's not too many footnotes where you're just going to be sitting and reading. It's not tafsir. Well, technically, all translations in a way are tafsir, but it's not too much. I'm sure you get the point. The third translation that I have really enjoyed, and it's probably the most beautiful translation in English, and that is the one by Tarif Khalidi. I think that's how you say his name. I'm terrible with names. I don't know why I can't pronounce names. But yeah, Tarif Khalidi or Khalidi, his translation is brilliant. It's beautiful. If you want a translation that you enjoy from an English language perspective, that's probably the one. The next book I want to recommend to you is a book by Imam Ghazali, and it's a letter to a disciple. It's a short book, it's a concise book, and it's an extremely powerful book because it removes all the fluff. It gets to the point. If you're struggling, if you find yourself in a place in your life, in your Islam, where you are just struggling to get back on track, implement what you've learned, you may have gained a lot of knowledge, watched many videos, gone to many courses, whatever the case is, but you just feel you are stuck in a rut and you just can't move forward and develop. This is a phenomenal book. I've personally read this book several times because, like all of us, we all have our down times, and we all have times where we sort of fall off track and aren't doing as well as we should be. But this is one of those books that's going to pick you up, put you right back on track, and get right to the point. It hits you hard. It hits you really hard. And it shifts you. It shifts something within you. It's very powerful. So definitely check this book out. The third book I want to recommend is a biography of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, there are many biographies out there, many brilliant biographies written by Muslims, but the one I want to recommend to you is one written by a non-Muslim. Now, it's not the biography done by Karen Armstrong. That's a very popular one, a popular non-Muslim biography, which many Muslims have read too. But the one I want to recommend is by a guy called Barnaby Rogerson, the Prophet Muhammad, a biography. It's brilliant. It's written like a novel. It's almost storytelling at its best. Now, for me personally, I enjoyed the first part of this biography as compared to the latter part, and that was just because the style in the first part of the book was very. It's like a novel. You're reading, and the way he writes, it takes you into that moment, into that time, allows you to visualize what's going on. It's very powerful. Also, it's raw in a profound way. And what I mean by that is, for example, when Rogerson speaks about the wives of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his marriages, around page 30 of the book, the way he summarizes it and puts it, it's phenomenal coming from a non-Muslim. You know, it's just the paradigm shift stuff in a way, because he's not cutting corners, watering things down or anything like this, but at the same time, the way he articulates the marriages of the Prophet, peace be upon him, it's phenomenal. And I'm gonna leave it at that, because I want you guys to read it for yourself, and I don't want to butcher it. The fourth book I want to recommend, one of my favorite books, a book I believe every Muslim should read at some point in their life, especially if you live in the West. And I say the West, but technically anywhere you live in the world today, is The Divine Reality by Hamza. Now, I'm not promoting or emphasizing the value of this book because I know him, I'm close to him, etc. No, it is a phenomenal book. It's probably, it's a one-stop shop. It's the one book, if you are interested in the topic of Islam, atheism, philosophy, arguments for God's existence, the refutation of the arguments against God's existence, and all of these topics, this is the one book you need to read. I would even go as far as saying that it's probably the only philosophical book you need to read. You don't even need to bother delving into philosophy and philosophical arguments or individual books. If you're looking to, engage this topic of God's existence and proofs for God's existence, this book is sufficient. It's been sufficient for me. Like, I don't think I've read any other book on the topic of proofs for God's existence aside from this. And I really don't feel I need to, because Hamza has literally captured every single argument. Those sound, solid, powerful arguments that we need. And another beautiful thing about this book is that it's not just dry philosophy, logic, reason. Every single argument in the book is connected to the Quran. He shows the Quranic basis for every single argument. Every single book ties, each section ties up. He brings each section together in a way where it relates to and it's tied to the worship of Allah. Which is essential. Essentially, this is what even the Quran, when Allah has given us the Quran to take us from God's existence to His worship. And Hamza, mashallah, follows suit in this regard, where every single argument he presents, he shows the Quranic basis for it, and then he links it to worship. It's beautiful. Definitely read this book. The fifth book I want to recommend is by Nasr Hussein. It's called A Young Muslim's Guide to the Modern World. I think I'm not messing that title up. This is a brilliant book as well. It's excellent. it gives you, some of the core concepts you need as a Muslim, a young Muslim in the West. It philosophically, theophilosophically grounds you. It shows you the strength of our intellectual tradition. It shows you or highlights the world that we live in. The philosophies that govern the world that we live in. And once you understand those things, you're better able to navigate the space. So it's a brilliant book to ground you from a Western perspective as a Muslim, to show you the sort of strength of the Islamic tradition, to highlight and expose some of the shoddy, dodgy philosophies and ideologies that are out there, which are presented as if they are, revelation, when in reality they are flawed by their very nature. So this is a very, very good book to read as well. The next book I want to recommend, the sixth book I believe, is similar to the one I've just mentioned, but it's, for me, I really love this book. I have almost completed this book. Well, not almost, but I'm starting to read it again the second time. And it's Rethinking Islam in the West by Ahmed Keeler. It's a small book, but it's dense and it's phenomenal. He covers the history of the West leading up to now this postmodern era, all the way from the philosophers, the existentialist philosophers, and how they try to, fill the gap which the world created, the West created when they turned away from God, how that failed, how, these ideologies today in the world, these godless secular ideologies are failing on some fundamental levels, and the crises that this is resulting in. And he basically then wraps this all up by providing an Islamic solution to the problem. It's a brilliant book. It's novel thinking. You're going to gain a lot from this book. It's going to give, again, perspective. It's going to give you the grounding to be able to function in the world that we live in today, and not only help yourself, but, God willing, help other people too. The seventh book I want to recommend is The Twilight of Atheism by Alister McGrath. Again, this is, for me, it's probably one of the best books on atheism. It basically covers the whole history of modern atheism. Again, all the way from the philosophers, the existentialists, the psychologists, the logical positivists, and all of their ideas and how they've filtered through to our times. Again, the first maybe third or 2/3 of the book is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, he's a Christian academic, so expect there to be some, bias towards Christianity as a solution or a response. But nevertheless, the historical aspects of the book are brilliant. The next book I'm going to recommend to you guys is called Cosmic Chemistry. Now, I'm reading this currently. It's by John Lenox. Now, we know John Lenox wrote some brilliant books, God's Undertaker, etc. It's again, what he's done in this book is he's taken all of his previous works and he's taken a look at what modern science is showing now, the most recent research, and he's bringing it all together to present a case for God. And he covers many bases in this book. It's almost an encyclopedia type of book because he deals with the philosophy of science. He asks and engages the question, what is science in line with, atheism or theism? Then he further in the book goes on to discuss or suggest that what science is showing us today from a biological perspective, from the perspective of physics, etc., how we can use this to infer or suggest that the best inference in regards to these things is God. It's a powerful book. Again, it's one of those books which is going to cover many areas, but it's very relevant because, although atheism is on the decline today, and it's not as relevant, nevertheless, some of the ideas which first began with the logical positivists and then were promoted by the atheists have taken hold of the psyches of people, the minds of people, Muslims as well, especially when we go through secular education. And the things he covers in that are going to be extremely useful for Muslims that are involved in science, for Muslims that are studying science, and for Muslims generally who are going through secular education. It's really good. It's one of his best books. I think it's probably his best book according to me. That being said, obviously, in this particular book, as compared to his previous works, he seems to take more of a Christian approach as he draws to the end of the book. And obviously there's that bias there, and he's promoting Christianity by the end of the book specifically. Although John Lenox, we know he does brilliantly well up to the point where he's talking about a creator, a cause for everything that exists. But as soon as he brings his Christian theology into it, that's where he's had his stumbles, even with Dawkins' debate that he had. So just keep that in mind. But aside from that, it's a really, really good book. I think we're on the ninth book. The ninth book I want to recommend is by Anthony Flew. He was one of the most eminent atheist philosophers of the past century. He was regarded, really high. He was really up there. But near the end of his life, he had a change of heart and mind. He basically, I think he, as far as I can remember, his conclusion was he adopted a type of deistic concept of God. But he at least acknowledged that there was a creator, a cause behind the universe. Now, what's really interesting about the book is that being such an eminent philosopher that's gone through dealt with and tackled the most complex arguments for and against God throughout his entire life, what leads him to the conclusion that there is a cause, that there is a creator, are some very simple, basic, but nevertheless powerful, logical arguments. Right? Yeah, and that's what's phenomenal about his book, and the way he defends those and posits those arguments, being a philosopher, is very powerful, very powerful. So definitely read that book again if you're interested in the topic of atheism, theism, or atheist conversions, if you like. The final book I want to recommend is, and by the way, there are many other books. I may do another video. Now I'm thinking about this, but the final book that comes to mind that I've really benefited from is the translation and the original of Tadabbur Quran by Amin Islahi. Now, there are many brilliant tafsir works, classical works out there. Now, I don't want you guys to think just because I'm mentioning this specific tafsir that there's something very unique and novel about it compared to others, or it's better. There are some novel factors about it, but it's not that it's better or worse, etc. The only reason I'm mentioning is because I personally, when I was in my sort of studies of the Arabic language, and that's ongoing, that particular tafsir really benefited me from several perspectives. Now, obviously, when it comes to these works, I'm not saying that they're perfect. Obviously, there may be issues and there may be some things which may not be entirely correct. However, his particular tafsir, what's phenomenal about it is, number one, he was a very deep thinker, and he spent his entire life studying the Quran. And when you read his tafsir, what you find is that he brings out points which are very intuitive, powerful, but at the same time, they're points that we gloss over because we just don't spend that much time pondering and reflecting over the Quran. So when you read those, you have ongoing aha moments, these moments where you're just in awe and you're amazed and you have to stop and think. And the second powerful thing about his tafsir is that he brings in a lot of or he discusses a lot of the meanings of the root words in the Arabic that are used in the Quran. And he shows the correlations and the different usages of those words. So that's very powerful as well, especially if you're studying the Arabic from the perspective of wanting to engage the Quran more. Brilliant tafsir. Now, that being said, another one that comes to mind, which I think I should mention, is Dr. Israr Ahmed's tafsir. It's, what's it called? It's been translated into English as well. But if you search Dr. Israr Ahmed's tafsir of the Quran, again, he was an individual who spent his entire life studying the Quran. And again, when you read his tafsir, he brings out points which just leave you stunned. It's phenomenal. And I mean, if you guys can understand Urdu or read Urdu, then you have the lectures available online and you have the full works in the original language too. So those are the 10 books that I've really benefited from myself. I hope you found this video useful. Check those books out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And before you guys go, it's not a book, but it's an app, but it serves a phenomenal purpose. And I'm talking about Quranly. If you guys haven't checked out the Quranly app, it's a brilliant app. Brilliant app, which is designed to help you develop a regular and consistent relationship with the Quran. I was blessed to be a part of developing or helping develop some sections of the app. And, I use it myself. Especially in Ramadan, it's phenomenal. But even outside of Ramadan, it's specifically designed, like I said, to help you read the Quran regularly. And that's what we need to do. Fundamentally, that is the one book that we should all be reading regularly. because that's going to shape our worldview, that's going to shape the way we see reality, that's going to shape us and who we are and who we become. So that is one book that we should not put down. You finish it, you read it again. You read it, you finish it again, you read it again. And you just keep doing that, inshallah. So anyway, guys, may Allah bless you, and I'll speak to you guys next time. Assalamu alaikum.